carries the day. We must be careful as to what we'll do with these committees. Because otherwise, the chairpersons of the committees, the vice chairs, the members, will basically become bystanders on issues which are of concern to their respective committees. I'm just warning you, members. Yeah, soon as you take a vote on these issues, try to be careful. Thank you. I second.
Honourable members, I propose a question which is that pursuant to the provisions of Standing Order 28, this House approves the calendar of the National Assembly regular sessions for the second session 2023 as contained in the schedule. I put the question that pursuant to the provision of Standing Order 28, this House approves the calendar of the National Assembly regular sessions for the second session 2023 as contained in the schedule. As members of that opinion say aye. Aye. Will those of the contrary opinion say nay? The ayes have it. Next.
Order number 16, special motion, appointment of the Parliamentary Service Commissioner who is not a member of Parliament.
Majority.
Thank you, Honourable Speaker. And I beg to move that, taking into consideration the recommendation of the Parliamentary Service Commission in its report on the recruitment of the Parliamentary Service Commissioner, who is not a member of Parliament, laid on the table of the House on Tuesday, 14th February 2023, and pursuant to the provisions of Article 127, 2D of the Constitution, this House appoints the Honourable Johnson Muthama as a member of the Parliamentary Service Commission. Honourable Speaker, we did lay the report of the Parliamentary Service Commission on the table of the House yesterday afternoon. Honourable Speaker, as I said, I'm only doing this on behalf of the Parliamentary Service Commission. And Honourable Speaker, if members have had the opportunity to go through the report, you will see that due process has been followed, because the most important thing in this recruitment processes is to ensure that due process is followed. And having perused this report, Honourable Speaker, I am satisfied, as I'm sure many other members will be satisfied, that this due process was indeed followed in consideration of the close to 170, though actually 171 applications, and the shortlisting of 8 qualified applicants whose interviews were conducted by the Commission, and subsequently the recommendation to the House, as is contained in that report, to fill that vacancy with the Honourable Johnson Muthama. I can also confirm, Honourable Speaker, that the Honourable Johnson Muthama does meet the set requirements for appointment to this position of a commissioner. He has the requisite academic credentials, the technical proficiency, and leadership and public affairs skills that put him above many of the other 170 applicants who had applied for this position. And I would agree, Honourable Speaker, with the Commission's recommendation towards the appointment of the Honourable Johnson Muthama as a commissioner for a set term of 6 years, as stipulated under our Constitution, that he'll only serve a 1 6-year term. The Honourable Muthama, Honourable members, is coming to replace the Honourable Chepkonga, who was here yesterday afternoon as the report was being tabled, and it was mentioned that he resigned to run in the 2022 elections, and I heard him affirm that indeed he is here, meaning he was actually elected and made it back to the House. And as we thank the Honourable Chepkonga for the good work that he did while working as a commissioner in the last commission in the 12th Parliament, we want to encourage the Honourable Johnson Muthama, who has served this country and this House as a member of Parliament, even as a whip in this House and also in the other House in the Senate. He's therefore an experienced legislator and somebody who knows the issues that concern members of Parliament and their welfare, and members of Parliament including senators. And therefore we do expect that the Honourable Johnson Muthama will take up this position in the Commission if and when approved by this House, and be able to serve in the Commission to ensure that members' welfare and all their concerns are properly addressed. And I want to challenge the Honorable Mudhama, having served in this House when there were very few members of Parliament, and when not all members of Parliament, Honorable Speaker, then were accommodated in offices, and he knows the same persists. When he served as a member of Parliament, when he served as a senator, he knows and is aware that many of us still do not have offices, and the tower, Honorable Speaker, as the Commission has promised, would be encouraging the Honorable Mudhama when he joins the Commission to work to ensuring that that tower is completed. At least I have seen in the night, Honorable Speaker, the lights are all on. And I was asking why are we wasting power, and I was told by some of our technical people that they were doing testing for the lighting system in the offices and the lifts, and therefore that it is a good sign that there is some progress towards completion of that tower to ensure that all these members of Parliament are able to serve their constituents well and with proper facilities. Honorable Speaker, allow me also to, in conclusion, to thank the Parliamentary Service Commission, which you chair, for expeditiously processing the nomination of Honorable Mudhama, together with all the other 171 members, together with the Secretariat to the Commission. They worked within a very short time and were able to shortlist and even be able to interview these people and come up with the name of the Honorable Mudhama. Finally, I urge the House to approve this nominee and pave way for the swearing in of the Honorable Johnson Mudhama, so that he can join the Commission and contribute to the transaction of business within the Commission. With those very many remarks, I beg to move, and I want to ask my good neighbor and friend, the Honorable Joses Mengich, to second.
Thank you, Honorable Madam Speaker. I second the motion, the appointment of Johnston Mudhama, the Honorable Member, as the Commissioner for the Public, for the PSC. Thank you.
Proceed. You may proceed. They'll turn it off.
Thank you, Honorable Madam Speaker, for allowing me that chance. The mic went off, and I had to request for an extension of time. Thank you. Yes, like I said, I second the appointment of Senator Honorable Johnston Mudhama to be the Commissioner for the PSC. Johnston Mudhama has a wealth of experience, with this vast experience in politics, vast experience in legislation. I hope that we, the young legislators who came in recently, will learn from his vast experience. I look forward to meeting him here, and also in the Commission, so that I can learn more from him. Thank you, Madam Speaker.
What is your point on order? You may okay. Proceed, Leader of Minority. I propose the question. I now propose the question that, taking into consideration the recommendation of the Parliamentary Service Commission in its report on the recruitment of the Parliamentary Service Commissioner, who is not a member of Parliament, laid on the table of this House today, Tuesday, February 14, 2023, and pursuant to the provisions of Article 127, 2D of the Constitution, this House appoints the Honorable Johnson Mudhama as a member of the Parliamentary Service Commission. Can I put the question? I'll only allow one person, and that is Honorable Wandai. Now I can pronounce your name.
Madam Speaker, this is such an important motion that I would wish members contribute, because it concerns their welfare, really. Yeah, this idea of putting the question, let's be careful about it. Yeah, this is a so critical matter. And it only happens once in a session, in a term of parliament, perhaps. Madam Speaker, from the outset, I have no issue with the appointment of the Honorable Senator Johnson Mudama to the commission. Honorable Mudama has been our colleague here in the past, both in the 11th Parliament and the 12th Parliament. And even early, actually. Yes, 10th. Yes. And he understands clearly the issues that we are confronted with every other day as members of Parliament. Madam Speaker, the Parliamentary Service Commission is one of those independent commissions that are established by the Constitution. And this particular commission is charged with the responsibility specifically of looking into the welfare of members, especially on the matter of services and facilities that members need to undertake their mandate, to discharge their mandate effectively and efficiently. So it is a commission that is so important to the functioning of this House, and indeed the entire Parliament. It is a commission that, again, incidentally, is chaired by none other than the Speaker of the National Assembly. And it has in it commissioners who are actually sitting members of Parliament. Incidentally, even those commissioners who come from outside the House are former members of Parliament. I don't know why, but that is the kind of tradition we have established. Because apart from Honorable Mudama, we have the Honorable Rachel Ameso, who is also a commissioner there. Rachel Ameso was previously a member of Parliament representing Kakamega County in the 11th Parliament, 12th, I think. 11th Parliament. So it's a commission comprising of legislators, past and present. And it should therefore be a commission which is very much cognizant of the issues that it needs to deal with for purposes of ensuring that members discharge their responsibilities effectively and efficiently. I won't talk much about the current commission because it's still very new. But there are issues. There are issues with past commissions that we must point out. As Honorable Chunga pointed out a while ago, the Parliament Towers, that monument you see there, has been in the process of being completed for the last 10 years. I remember the foundation was laid sometime in 2013 when I was a new member in this House. 3 commissions down the road, down the road, the building is still unoccupied. Still unoccupied, with billions and billions of taxpayers' money having gone down the drain, if I may call it so. And I say this from a point of authority, because I happen to have examined reports concerning it when I was chairing PAC in the 12th Parliament. We don't want to see such a situation going forward. This new commission must do its work. Do its work within the timeline set out and also prudently within the limitation of the resources which are available. Another crucial aspect of the mandate of this commission is on the employment, remuneration, and general welfare of the employees of the PSC. Let me say this, without a fear of contradiction, that in this regard, this commission has also let us down. We have had instances where employment of staff in this Parliament has not been done in a transparent manner, has been done in a terribly skewed manner. The Commission has condoned, has abetted, has indeed encouraged nepotism, tribalism, and what have you, in terms of employment That is recruitment, remuneration, promotions, and what have you. To an extent that the PSC has become like what someone called some time back an animal farm. There are employees who are stuck in the commission. They cannot progress. And if you look at the reasons why, where they come from, their names, their looks, their gender, and their religion, that is something that must come to an end. It is not tenable, for instance, Madam Speaker, that in the entire parliamentary structure, in terms of employees, that the entire parliamentary service, as we speak, there are communities in this country who have got no representation. And there are others who have got no representation at the higher echelons of the PSC. I will speak for my own community, the indomitable Luo community. There is no single member of the Luo community in the senior management of this parliament as we speak. I don't know. When I speak, I know, I'm speaking from a point of knowledge. And I know you can go on and on. So I think as Honorable Mudama comes in to join this commission, the commission must change its way of doing things. And it must be fair, it must be transparent, and it must also apply the rules of natural justice. We have seen gerrymandering being orchestrated when chances for promotions arise in this parliament. This is the epitome of our democratic culture, this house or this parliament. And therefore it should demonstrate to the rest of the country that it upholds those values and principles that are set out in the Constitution. In the Constitution. If Parliament cannot do that, which other body can do that? I'll be appealing to this commission, as chaired ably by our venerable Speaker, Honorable Wetangula, to correct those mistakes. I have been told, as I conclude, that there are instances where even employment numbers have been escalated.
Majority Leader?
Yes.
Thank you, Honorable Speaker. I know I have tremendous respect for the leader of minority. And I rise on standing order number 87, Honorable Speaker. One, that no member should, in his place, rise to impute improper motive on any other member, including members of the commission. And two, Honorable Speaker, on the question of statements of fact. And the Honorable Pio and I has said as a statement of fact, without adducing any evidence, that there is not a single member of his community. And Honorable Speaker, it may be very good to speak to this and to speak to the community out there, but facts before us speak contrary to what the Honorable Pio and I is saying, because I know there are very senior officers in Parliament, including directors.
Name them.
Even without naming them, the honorable members are already naming them.
No, I'm not doing it.
And I really want to dissuade members from discussing our officers on the basis of their ethnicity. And Honorable Speaker, it's only fair that the Honorable Pio and I don't want him to name officers, but he knows. He has been here since 2013, and we have served with him. He knows the officers. He knows those who are in directorates as directors, deputy directors, senior officers in this house. And therefore, it may be very easy, Honorable Speaker, to speak to the gallery and speak to people out there, inciting communities that they are not employable or they are not employed. And you know, my brother, it may look very nice saying it here, but it could also be saying something about members of Parliament who represent those communities, that they do not speak for them, which is not true, because I know And I also say this because Honorable Pio and I knows there are members of parliament from the community, as alluded to, who have had people employed in this house and in parliament and in other state positions, Honorable Speaker. And therefore, find it extremely out of order, completely out of order for the Honorable Pio and I to be insinuating that there is a community that has not been employed to any senior positions by parliament, while as he knows it is not true. And he has, I would wish he would have tabled a list of the senior people in management within parliament with their ethnicities, and he will see that even members of the Luo community are serving in very senior positions within parliament and in other echelons of government. And I just want to appeal to him, Honorable Speaker, to stop inciting people.
Honorable Member.
You know, really,
I think you have 2 minutes left.
I will not actually pursue that line because if you listen to me carefully, I said at senior management levels. It all depends on how you perceive or what you perceive senior management to mean. Yes, but all the same, the point is driven home. What I am doing currently, Madam Speaker, is to demonstrate that I'm very serious about this issue. I have undertaken my own private special audit in my capacity as the leader of minority party on the recruitment exercises that have been undertaken by the Commission in the last 3 financial years. Once I conclude it, I will be tabling my report here. Madam Speaker, what that report will reveal will shock you. Because I'm aware that even in the very latest recruitment process, the numbers were inflated beyond what was advertised. Those kind of things cannot happen under our noses as members of parliament in a commission that is supposed to take care of our welfare. That's what I'm saying. And you know me, I talk very freely. You know me very well, Honorable Chungwa. Yes. And when I am prompted to talk freely, I will do so without fear or favor. Because we must right these things. These wrongs must be righted. This commission must be a transparent commission. Yes, thank you, Madam Speaker.
Okay.
Even as you approve Mudama's appointment.
I think the mood of the House is that we put the question. Honorable members, I now put the question that taking into consideration the recommendations of the Parliamentary Service Commission in its report on the recruitment of the Parliamentary Service Commissioner, who is not a member of Parliament, laid on the table of this House today, Tuesday, February 14th, laid on the table of this House on February 14, 2023, and pursuant to the provisions of Article 127(2)(d) of the Constitution, this House appoints Honorable Johnston Mudhama as a member of the Parliamentary Service Commission. Will as many as of that opinion say aye? Aye. Will as many as of the contrary opinion say nay? The ayes have it.
Order number 16, motion, general debate on the proposal to Parliament to consider amending the Constitution and the standing orders.
Owen Baya. Honorable Owen Baya, member for Kilifi North.
Thank you very much, Madam Speaker, for giving me the opportunity to contribute to the debate. Madam Speaker, the President raises very important and serious issues for this nation. The first one...
Apologies, member for Kilifi. I just informed that there was actually a member who had time left. Honorable Aundo, where are you? Let's give him his 9 minutes, and then we shall proceed. Sorry, I hadn't been informed. Then we'll come to you, Honorable Baya.
Thank you, Honorable Speaker. I was going to have protested the loudest of all the loud noises I could have made. Honorable Speaker, as I was saying before time lapsed, Yesterday, the Honorable Speaker presented a message from the President. And he said in pursuant to Standing Order 42.2 that the President can send a message to the National Assembly. I suppose, Honorable Speaker, that arises from the constitutional mandate of the President to address Parliament. Honorable Speaker, as we talked in the morning, as much as there might be merits in the text of the memorandum, there is a problem with the process. In the reading of Standing Order 42.2, Honorable Speaker, the intention is a message conveying either appointments or matters of mutual interest. In the simple understanding and layman's understanding of a word memorandum, is more or less like an instruction to a particular body by a superior body to act in a certain manner. Honorable Speaker, for that we find it a lot of difficulty for even to have considered to table the same memorandum here on the floor of the House for debate. Honorable Speaker, many members of Parliament and many commentators have had difficulties with Article 115 of the Constitution of Kenya that allows the President to refer an act of Parliament or a bill back to Parliament for purposes of attending to some kind of reservations. Honorable Speaker, by that very nature, we have argued that the President abrogates himself the powers to make laws, yet the Constitution of Kenya is explicitly clear that the lawmaking process rests in the National Assembly by the participation of the Senate. That's virtue of Article 94. We take great offense for this particular memorandum and the mere fact that it has even been allowed to come and debated in this particular floor of Parliament. Honorable Speaker, secondly, and Article 2 of the Constitution of Kenya, it proclaims the supremacy of this Constitution, so that the changing of this Constitution cannot be initiated by the whims of any individual of whatever status or position he holds. We find this, Honorable Speaker, unconstitutional and an attack on democracy and the values of this country. Honorable Speaker, under Article 131.2 and what was affirmed by the Supreme Court judgment in the BBI case, the President is bound to respect and uphold and safeguard this Constitution. So at any single time, the President cannot contemplate, cannot imagine, and cannot actually initiate a process of amending the Constitution, yet he has sworn to uphold, respect, and safeguard the Constitution. Honorable Speaker, I think that's a matter that has already been exclusively settled by the Supreme Court, and unless that particular aspect is set aside, whatever the President has said here is essentially a breach of the Constitution, and generally that's breaching the Constitution, which is liable for impeachment as required so. Honorable Speaker, for the Parliament to even countenance and start talking about it is essentially, Honorable Speaker, Parliament has abdicated its duty as a lawmaking body. Honorable Speaker, even though the motion is couched in such a way that we make general comments, of course everybody will wonder for what value a general comment for a document that found its way in this particular House as an illegality. The President or anybody cannot make legislative proposals or changes to the Constitution or law by writing to the Speaker of the National Assembly. The power of the Speaker does not include making laws. So, Honorable Speaker, as we are here, we might be naughty, we might be making general comments, we are making general comments on illegality, and the Parliament is becoming part and parcel of the process to usurp the constitutional demarcation between the various arms of Parliament. We continuously complain that the executive is muscling Parliament. Yes, us as members of Parliament, we continuously allow this kind of situation to pertain and remain with us. Honorable Speaker, in view of what has been mentioned and what has been stated, the President in his memorandum raises a few issues. And again, it confirms our fears, Honorable Speaker, that the talk about the unconstitutionality of CDF might be anchored in very high places in this country. There's nothing unconstitutional about national government CDF of 2015. And indeed, the Supreme Court ruling avoided touching on the same and only made passing comments about the 2013 NGCDF. The President to imagine and think that NGCDF is unconstitutional and needs to entrench in the Constitution, that means, honestly speaking, that he is part and parcel of the problem that be developing that such important fund to the common mwananchi on the grounds. Honorable Speaker, we as Parliament, we must resist this and this.
Honorable Pukosi, what is out of order?
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I'm just listening to my colleague, Honorable Oundo, continuing lamenting and declaring that the President has brought a motion which is unconstitutional. You know, our Constitution provides under our standing orders that a bill will be introduced either by the majority party or minority party, or it can also be sponsored by either a private member's bill, or it could also be committee bill. In this case, the President memorandum has not introduced already the bill. What it has done is written to Parliament as the leader of the majority party. And therefore, that is the context in which this memorandum should be argued, not as an introduction of a motion by a president as a head of state. And I think, to me, I think Honorable Undo is out of order.
I think, Honorable Undo, you get the gist that there's no motion on the floor brought by the President. What is on the floor is a message by the Speaker that led to a general debate. So the President has not put a motion yet to the floor, but proceed.
Thank you, Honorable Speaker. Noted, but my colleague from NDBS also needs to know that the leader of majority in the National Assembly is none other than Honorable Ichung'wah, is not the President of the Republic of Kenya. Probably also he needs to record that in his notebook so that it does not confuse the two positions, Honorable Speaker. Honorable Speaker, the President makes reference to various issues. As I've said, the issue of NGCDF, Honorable Speaker, is completely out of order. There's nothing unconstitutional. Honorable Speaker, of course, the most interesting proposal, and which we take with a pinch of salt, and which is indeed mockery, is the intention to establish the office of the official opposition, the official opposition, or the leader of official opposition. Honorable Speaker, the 2010 Constitution was explicitly clear that we must do away with the Kanu era hangover. I see quite a number of my colleagues could still be having Kanu era hangovers. We have moved on, Honorable Speaker. We have adopted a presidential system where Parliament takes up the role, indeed, of checking and oversighting the national government. That we cannot abrogate. If we leave it, we have lost it. We need to blame ourselves, Honorable Speaker. Honorable Speaker, as I conclude, because time has run out, is the issue of the ministers or cabinet secretaries coming to the floor of the House. Honorable Speaker, we have complained continuously that to get 290 members to speak in this House, plus the women rep, is not possible. Ask a cabinet secretary to come here and spend 1 or 2 hours, and all members asking questions, they will have no chance to speak about, to respond, and that's why, Honorable Speaker, the leader of minority party said, has warned, we stand a chance of weakening the committees and later rendering them useless. For that few remarks, Honorable Speaker, we note the memorandum. It's just cosmetic. It has got no value to the records of the House. Thank you.
Thank you so much. Honorable members, we got enough time, so I would dissuade us from coming here. We'll follow the list, and we're going to debate this motion for the rest of the day. So everyone will have a chance to speak on the motion. This chance then goes to the Honorable Baya.
Thank you very much, Honorable Speaker. for giving me an opportunity to discuss the general debate. Honorable Speaker, from the onset, I would like to tell the Honorable Oundo, you see, when the debate is introduced, he had an opportunity to rise on his seat on a point of order to request the Speaker to give a ruling on the constitutionality of this debate at that particular point, so that this House does not at any one time entertain something that is unconstitutional. But because the Honorable Oundo started to sit at his place and not raise on a point of order, I think it is not in good taste for him to say that what the Speaker has allowed to be discussed in this House is unconstitutional. I think we are within the constitutional parameters to discuss this if he did not raise on point of order to question the constitutionality of this debate. Honorable Speaker, the President, like any other Kenyan has an opportunity to bring to this House a petition or anything to be discussed in this House. The President also takes leave to say, these are my thoughts, kindly discuss them in a general debate. And there is no motion, there is no bill, there is no proposal to amend law from the memorandum that the President has brought here. He says in his memorandum, these are his ideas. So in this general debate, Mr. Speaker, I would like to go straight to the issues of two-thirds gender rule. This country has grappled with the issue of two-thirds gender rule in Parliament for many years. The Honorable Aden Duale tried to do that. The Honorable Chepkonga tried to do that in the 11th Parliament. And there has been, for many years, attempts to try to get two-thirds. And I know many members, and the members that even speak negatively about it, know that we have a constitutional obligation to ensure that we achieve the two-thirds. The Supreme Court of this country, during the former Chief Justice, actually said Parliament is illegal because of the two-thirds gender. We have an opportunity as members of Parliament, and we are the makers of law. And we can change the Constitution, we can change any law that is here, so that we can actually achieve the two-thirds gender rule as prescribed by the Constitution. And the President is saying, look, these are some of the ideas that we need to look at to ensure that we achieve two-thirds gender rule. I would like to request Parliament, the House of Parliament, to consider the views as provided, to see whether it is possible for us to achieve this very important milestone that is in the Constitution. And Mr. Speaker, I support that we need to move to that threshold to get two-thirds gender rule in this Parliament, because it is very important that the genders be properly established and provided for in this House. Mr. Speaker, the office of Leader of Opposition, you know, the opposition in this country has decided, it's like a headless chicken trying to find where to go. They are holding public barazas all over, trying to provide leadership, trying to bring ideas, trying to do that. I hear tomorrow they will be at the offices of IBC to hold prayers outside the door. But if they had an opportunity to be in this House, that leadership, they would bring those ideas here on how to drive this country forward instead of going to marketplaces and trying to get ideas out there. Where change can come, where laws can be changed, it is in this House. And this is where we need the strong opposition to bring the leaders of opposition here, so that whatever they are discussing there in the marketplaces and all those other places, they can bring to this honorable, august House to discuss those ideas and have this country move forward instead of always looking for an opportunity to go out there and disturb the peace of the country just because you want to speak. Mr. Speaker, we want to give them an opportunity in this House to speak. We want to give them the opportunity in this House to give their ideas. We want them to give them the opportunity to oppose this government in this House. We want them in this House so that we can have a sober debate. Sober debate. Not just Kenyans should listen to them. They should be listened and also listen to other people. They get the monopoly of being listened to when they go to Kamkunji, when they go to Embakasi. They have the monopoly of just being listened to. There's nobody to reply or respond. We want to respond to them here formally in this House, in this floor, That is what we are saying. Bring the position of leader of opposition here, so that when they speak, we'll be able to respond. Honorable Speaker, the issues of accountability are very important. And in this country, Honorable Speaker, we have suffered deficiency of accountability for many years. Why? Because a chairman of a committee brings a report. That report cannot hold water. The cabinet secretary does not feel responsible for that report. He only allows it to come into this house. It is delivered here, and nobody questions, and even if questions take place, he delegates that to a junior officer. A junior officer writes a report to bring to Parliament. We are saying we would like cabinet secretaries to be responsible. We vetted those cabinet secretaries in this house. We approved them in this house. They must be accountable to this house, and that's why we want them here. And if our standing orders can provide a situation, can be tweaked to provide an opportunity for the cabinet secretaries to come here, even if for 1 hour, that cabinet secretary will not joke with Parliament. He will not, or she will not at any one time issue a statement here in Parliament for which he cannot fulfill. And that is why we need cabinet secretaries come to this house. What they do, we saw the saga of CDF. I was there in Mombasa. I took the brunt of it. But if the cabinet secretary was today to come here, I don't think he will take time to release funds. But this is what we need to do. Bring the cabinet secretaries here so that they can answer to Parliament. There are a lot of regulations that these cabinet secretaries sign into law. There are very many other extra laws that they sit down, and we have issues now with education, with the junior secondary schools. We have issues with how the education sector is being run. But the cabinet secretary is having it easy because he cannot be called to this house. Just like in Tanzania, just like in Uganda, just like within the East African community, cabinet secretaries go to Parliament to respond to questions. So it will happen, so must it happen here in Kenya, so that we can be part of the East African community in terms of parliamentary responsibility and accountability. That's why I support the proposal by the President that we should have cabinet secretaries sit in this house and answer to questions that members are raising. Mr. Speaker, the issue of entrenching CDF and affirmative action funds into the Constitution is fundamental. This is an important fund. And the more we continue not to have this fund in the Constitution, the more a lot of busybodies out there will always be rushing to court to challenge this. I'm not saying in any other way that CDF or NGAF is unconstitutional. For me, it is a fund that is anchored properly in law. The CDF Act 2015 is properly anchored in law. And Mr. Speaker, you know there are very many people here who are permanent litigants, people who just love going to court to challenge everything that happens in this country. Yes, they are vicious litigants. That what can derail a good cause, a good cause.
Then over the word is vexatious.
Vexatious, thank you. You know my English is only, yes, it's also correct. Vicious is also correct, apart from vexatious. So, good. You know I used to be a teacher of English. So what I'm saying is, for us to run away from that, I think it is very important that we anchor CDF and GAF in the Constitution. CDF is one of those funds that has brought a lot of developments in this country. There are children in this country who can access school because they have got money from CDF. There are villages in this country that the only development they have seen is their member of parliament going there with CDF and doing a project. This is a fund we must protect from all angles so that it can continue to take this country forward. Imagine with the 44 billion that we get for CDF, suppose we even go double, this country will move in leaps and bounds in terms of development. And I think we are duty-bound as members of parliament to use the power of legislation and law, and making law in this country, to actually put this in the Constitution. However, and however much time it takes, but I think we are duty-bound as members of parliament to anchor this fund that protects and brings Kenyans to a almost same level playing field.
Well said, Honorable Baya. This chance now goes to the member for Uasin Gishu County.
Thank you, Honorable Speaker. I'm just trying to put my timer on so that I make sure I stay on time. Honorable Speaker, thank you for the opportunity to be able to make my contribution in relation to His Excellency the President's message to the National Assembly that touches on various amendments to the Constitution in order to actualize the aspirations of Kenyans in relation to, one, inclusion, gender inclusion and affirmative action, the National Government Development Fund, the Constituency Fund, the National Government Affirmative Action Fund, oversight funds for the for members of Parliament, and also in relation to entrenching the office of the Leader of Opposition in our Constitution. Honorable Speaker, allow me just today to focus on the one in relation to gender inclusion and affirmative action, because that is the one area that doesn't have many subscribers. I know the matter relating to the other funds have many subscribers, but the gender question has bedeviled this country for many, many years, and that has been a part of, largely, of my professional life. And in order just that it goes on record how difficult it has been to achieve the 2/3 gender rule, it's important to look back at history, because then it will convince us that this message coming from the President is extremely important. It is the closest we have come to the 2/3 gender rule being addressed at that level. This gender rule question has a long history. It started with the Beijing Conference, where women from this country were led by Niva Mwendwa, a great woman indeed. At that time, the affirmative action was not entrenched in our Constitution, was not even spoken about. The women came back from Beijing with great hope, because then Kenya was on its way to sign the United Nations Convention on Human Rights. So this matter of the 2/3 gender rule is not a women's issue. It is not a men's issue. It is a human rights issue. It's an issue of equality. That was followed by the Women's Caucus in Bomas during the Constitutional Conference. It finally culminated in us having Article 100 and Article 81 of our Constitution, which clearly said that no more than 2/3 of any gender should be in any elective or appointive positions. It is at this stage that we managed to put in our Constitution the fact that we must include people with disabilities, youth, ethnic minorities, and women in all spheres of life in our country. But this article on these articles being put in the Constitution did not achieve much, because thereafter Parliament was required to enact a law to implement that particular part of our Constitution. So because it did not happen, the women's movement and the civil society that deals with matters women and human rights, which I have been a part of for most of my professional life, went to the Supreme Court to seek a Supreme Court advisory. The Supreme Court then said it was expected that implementation would have happened within 10 years after the Constitution was promulgated. And that gave us the year 2015. Despite that advisory, nothing happened. And then, even around that time, the late Justice Onguto, God rest his soul, made a landmark decision of the court, where he said he declared the then cabinet being unconstitutional because it did not meet the 2/3 gender rule. This was after the now governor for Kirinyaga, Waiguru, and then immediate former governor for Kitui, Charity Ngilu, were removed from cabinet. Then we had a shortage of women in cabinet. Justice Onguto declared that cabinet was unconstitutional, but only preserved it to allow it because we were about to get to the elections. And therefore, it ought to have been implemented in 2017. Justice Onguto, God rest his soul, died shortly after making that ruling. In fact, as a women's movement, we were worried that maybe he was killed because he had supported women. Thereafter, there was a chorus that started of negative people in our society and other government operatives who then decided that the wage bill issue had become an issue and that the exacerbating factor in the wage bill was women and devolution. They attempted to reduce the members of parliament from 290 constituencies to 210. They attempted to start to reduce the counties from 47 to 10, and they actually attempted through the then Honorable Joe Mathambu, I think, to remove the clause that no more than 2/3 of any appointive elective positions cannot be held by one gender. Thank God that backfired. Thereafter, we've had several attempts. We've had the Chepkonga bill, again, which was unacceptable to people like myself and the women's movement because it said that the 2/3 gender rule should be achieved progressively. But we must put this in a record. The United Nations Convention on Human Rights, to which Kenya is a signatory, says that human rights are achievable immediately and not progressively. It's only social and economic rights that can be achievable progressively. Then the court, Justice Mumbi, was able to give another court order and gave Parliament 60 days to implement the 2/3, to enact a law that implements the 2/3 gender rule. That was followed by the Duale Bill 1, the Duale Bill 2, all did not succeed. Thereafter, again, the courts were faithful to the women of Kenya, and Justice Mativo ordered that Parliament implements that rule or stand dissolved. At that time, I remember that the women's movement decided that it's not good to pursue dissolution at that time. It would have given Parliament, shortly before election, another lifeline for 5 years. We were not going to give them that opportunity. In the 12th Parliament, where I was privileged to first join Parliament, FIDA, CROA, CRU, and many other civil society groups began to sit down. And finally, Law Society of Kenya was able to go to court, and the court resolved to dissolve the 12th Parliament. I was one of the members. Despite being a member of Parliament, I participated in calling for the dissolution of Parliament then. That is how serious we did take that. Justice Maraga gave the advisory to the president then, and today that advisory remains alive at the desk of the current president. So this is timely, because the 13th Parliament will stand dissolved should we not implement the 2/3 gender rule. We now look forward to this 13th Parliament having the opportunity, especially considering that we now have the political will from the highest office in the land, to ensure that finally Kenya will be able to implement the 2/3 gender rule. I am greatly delighted as someone who's participated in this journey with the women's movement in Kenya, that this time is the closest we have come. I look forward to the time the bills will come to Parliament and that they shall be debated. Thank you, Honorable Speaker, for the opportunity to lend my voice to this very important topic. Thank you.
Very well spoken. The Honorable Member for Magarini, Harrison Kombe. Honorable Harrison Kombe. Okay, seems the Honorable Kombe has left. The Honorable Member for Roysambu, Augustine Mwafrika.
Thank you, Madam Speaker, for the opportunity. to also support this motion, where His Excellency asked this Parliament to consider amending Constitution so that we can be able to achieve more, and especially on the first one, which is the two-third gender principle, Madam Speaker. Madam Speaker, I'm just imagining if the former president did exactly what the Chief Justice had requested him to do, to dissolve Parliament due to this constitutional anomaly. This country, Madam Speaker, would have been plunged into a constitutional crisis. And as Honorable Shorey has just said, that even this Parliament is not an exception of that request. And that request is still lying on the desk of the current president. So, Madam Speaker, I support this request by the president so that we can be able to implement this gender principle. Madam Speaker, I also want to contribute on the regard of the creation of the office of the leader of the opposition. Madam Speaker, it is necessary so that the leader of the opposition can use the platform of Parliament to criticize government. I wish to congratulate His Excellency, as we know that many people and many leaders don't like to be criticized. But His Excellency has proposed that the opposition be given a platform so that they can be criticizing the government using that platform. Madam Speaker, I support that the creation of the office of the leader of the opposition is necessary. Madam Speaker, let me also contribute in regard to that cabinet secretaries should be coming to Parliament to answer questions from members of Parliament. Madam Speaker, this is more than necessary. I would like to give an example of a crisis we have today in the Ministry of Education, the Ministry of Lands. Madam Speaker, the former CS in the Ministry of Land, Madam Caronay, when she became the CS in that ministry, she became untouchable. Today, Madam Speaker, and also to remind you that lawyers or advocates, they demonstrated to the CS of the Ministry of Lands. Because the former CS, Madam Speaker, she messed that ministry. She took some files from that ministry, and we understand that those files were taken to Nyayo House. Others were taken to Survey of Kenya, Madam Speaker. Kenyans have waited for long. Since that time, she was the CS, because the transactions at the Ministry of Lands have not been possible, because there are no files. Where they were taken by that minister, by that CS, reasons are still not known why. So, Madam Speaker, I'm just wishing if it were like today, whereby we are saying that, or we are proposing CSs.
You may slightly take your seat. I would like to request you not to over-engage on naming a former cabinet secretary in this motion that you are pursuing. And I'm just quoting standing order number 87, content of speeches, and I would like to read. Neither the personal conduct of the President, nor the conduct of the Speaker or any judge, nor judicial conduct of any person performing judicial functions, nor any conduct of the head of state or government or a representative in Kenya of any friendly country, or the conduct of the holder of the office whose removal from such office is dependent on a decision of the House shall be referred to adversely except upon a specific substantive motion of which at least 3 days notice has been given. Honorable Mafrika, the matter that you are raising, I know it is extremely important, but it is better that it comes as a motion if you really want it to be discussed. I am sure that you can proceed with the motion without overly mentioning a former cabinet secretary. So if you really want to do this, you can do it in a motion, and then proper notice should be provided. You may proceed.
Thank you, Madam Speaker, for that correction. Madam Speaker, I was saying that if it were like today, whereby we are proposing cabinet secretaries to be coming to Parliament to answer questions from members of Parliament, we would request the necessary committee, Madam Speaker, to summon that CS to come here to tell us where he took the correspondence files and the deed files from the Minister of Lands. Because there are those Kenyans who applied for loans, but still the registration of charges have never been effected due to the fact that those files are not available. There are those Kenyans who applied for the registrations of titles, and Madam Speaker, for the last 3 months or so, 3 years or so, that has not been done due to the fact that the files are not available in the pigeons at the Ministry of Land. So, Madam Speaker, I am supporting that the CSs should come to Parliament to answer questions from members of this House. Madam Speaker, I also support the affirmative action funds so that also the women representative, Madam Speaker, can be able to be given muscle to be able also to participate in the development of the areas they represent in this House, Madam Speaker. Madam Speaker, I support the request by the President to amend the Constitution. I thank you very
much.
Speaker.
Thank you very much, Member for Roysambu. The Honorable Gishimu Gedeji, Member for Gichugu.
Thank you, Madam Speaker, for that opportunity to also contribute in this general debate on the proposal to Parliament to consider the amendment of the Constitution in various aspects. Madam Speaker, let me start with the proposal to amend the Constitution to entrench NGCDF, GAF, and the Senate Oversight Fund into the Constitution. Madam Speaker, it appears there is a convergence of might between the wisdom of the President and also the wisdom of this House through the members who took the initiative to start the process, and which has already been canvassed in this House. So, Madam Speaker, I will not belabor the point because it is already agreed in this House that it is important to entrench NGCDF, GAF, and the Oversight Fund for the Senate into the Constitution, and especially in the wake of the very many cases that are threatening these funds, especially NGCDF. There are so many people who appear to be like they are enemies of Kenyans because they don't want people at the grassroots to benefit from these nationally devolved funds like NGCDF. And entrenching it in the Constitution, it is not unconstitutional, but just to keep away the busybodies from courts, entrenching these funds in the Constitution will firmly make it possible that the citizens of this country will never have any fear that they can disappear at any particular time. Madam Speaker, that is already work in progress, and I believe these proposals will find its place in the ad hoc committee, which was formed jointly by involving the members of the National Assembly and the Senate. On the other aspects, Madam Speaker, it is very, very important to obey our own constitution, which requires under Article 27, Subarticle 8, that the state shall take legislative and other measures to implement the principle that not more than any one gender or membership of any one gender will have more than 2/3 in any elective or appointive bodies. Madam Speaker, the President comes squarely within the Constitution to propose, because the requirement of the Constitution, it is the state. And who is the head of the state? It is the President. So in this proposal, the President has done what the Constitution requires of him to propose, so that the Parliament can take its legislative role to make sure that a law is passed that will also obey the Constitution and to safeguard this country from the threats of the courts, like the way it happened in the 12th Parliament. 12th Parliament was a different parliament from this one. We don't know whether someone is contemplating also going to court again and to threaten this Parliament with dissolution. Madam Speaker, the other aspect is also on the ministers. The amendment of the standing orders through the House, Procedure and House Rules Committee, which also will still have to come to this Parliament for approval, so that the ministers can be able to come and answer questions before this House. Mr. Speaker, we have so many questions that lapsed because ministers were probably not available, sending juniors to the committees, ineffectiveness. So this time, any minister who does not answer a question within probably a reasonable time will also have to face the House and tell the House why he or she has not been able to answer questions from the members. And like in my constituency, I've had so many questions about roads. I have one road which I call the Belt of Geshogo, which covers all the roads in Geshogo. The question that I asked in the last Parliament, because in the last session, sorry, because once a session ends, all the questions that are usually asked in the previous session lapse. So I have to start it all over again. But had these ministers been obligated to come in this Parliament, probably that would have been sorted and my people from Geshogo would have been aware of what is happening with their roads, the issues of water, electricity, and many other development projects that they are looking upon me to follow up. Rarely do citizens know what happens in the committees, but in this particular situation, then citizens and Kenyans will be able to follow up on matters before this House. The other issue is the establishment of the office of the Leader of the Opposition. I believe that is a very, very important point. It is not being proposed for the current situation. It's a proposal for prosperity. It is not known who will be the Leader of Opposition in the next 5 years, in the next 10 years. So this position is, let not know any sign of the political divide. Think that this law is being made for a particular person. It is made for an office, and that office can be occupied by anyone in future. So it's good. You know, in the Kenyan politics, I've seen that elections are usually very the margins are usually very thin. And it's good also to appreciate that the other side has also made a very big effort and to be in parliament and also to follow up and to check or to put the government in check through participation in parliament, leading the other side in parliament, at least for better and meaningful engagements, because like we may not be able to follow up on what is happening out there when there are meetings arranged for demonstrations or other things by people who are in the opposition. But they are good, they are also doing a good thing, but we may not be able to follow. But when they are here, everyone may be able to follow their points and listen and probably see what can be accommodated and what cannot be accommodated. So it's a right to demonstrate, but at the same time, it would be more important if the issues that are raised can be raised in this parliament through an established office of the leader of opposition. Finally, Madam Speaker, let me also say that it's also important to empower Senate in terms of oversight. The Constitution allows division of revenue between the national government and the county government. We as members of parliament oversight the national government. Largely, we may be facilitated, but probably we may also require further facilitation. But for the Senate, there is no single requirement of facilitation for them to be able to oversight the counties. And that is why it is very, very critically important to have the Senate facilitated through a fund which is also in the Constitution to be able to follow up for the many billions that go to the counties for development and be able to oversight. Madam Speaker, since this is a general debate, there is no vote that will be taken on it, but generally, I support the whole idea of entrenching whatever has been proposed in the Constitution. Thank you, Madam Speaker.
Very well. Member for Mandera South, the Honorable Abdul Haru. Members, I'm trying to stick to the list as much as possible, and I can hear what
thank you.
You have said. And also, before you speak, I would like to say that I am not going to take the points of order, because I think it's like trying to catch attention. Honorable members, you realize that these members have done a lot of research on this motion, so let us give them enough time to speak. You may proceed.
Thank
Member
you.
for Mandera South.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. I stand to support this motion, and I thank His Excellency the President for sharing the 4 issues that he has presented in his memorandum. The issues are very important, and the fact that they have been debated for long, that is since previous years until now, and they are still relevant, makes them quite important issues. And therefore, I say the 4 issues that have been shared in the President's memorandum, that is the 2/3 gender principle matter, the creation of the office of the leader of opposition, and the inclusion of various decentralized funds in the Constitution, including the NGCDF, NGAF, and the Senate Oversight Committee, Senate Oversight Fund, and also the restructuring of parliamentary oversight to allow for cabinet secretaries to appear before the House. I think those 4 issues are timely and most welcome. And I thank the Speaker for referring the issues to the relevant committees. It is my hope that those relevant committees, including JLAC, the Joint Parliamentary Ad Hoc Committee, and the Procedure and House Rules Committee, will expedite the processes that will help us move these 4 issues forward. The two-third gender principle issue is an issue that is anchored in the Constitution, and I think it's an issue which I consider to be a single most issue of existential threat to this House if it is not handled. And I think it is only fair that this issue now is sorted once and for all. The last Parliament, the 12th Parliament, was not able to resolve this matter despite Chief Justice Maraga making a ruling on this issue. And it is the right time now to make sure this matter is resolved once and for all. The creation of the office of the Leader of the Opposition, like it has been argued by many members here, it's an issue that is not pegged on an individual. It's an issue that is aimed at addressing a lacuna in our laws, in our Constitution. The Constitution, the Constitution 2010 created a void where the second best presidential candidate in our elections always find themselves out of Parliament with their troops in the House, and they are out of Parliament, and they don't have a role in the governance in this country. And therefore, it's an issue that is very important. It helps us address some of that lacuna in our law, and it is also an issue that we have to do now, not for individuals we may have in mind right now, but for posterity. And it is an issue that will help us, give platform, a legal platform and structure to the Leader of Opposition to be able to contribute legally and in a constitutionally structured manner to the governance issues in this country. When we talk about inclusion of various decentralized funds, especially the NGCDF and GAF, it is an issue I'm sure we all know how important it is. You have seen, especially when it comes to the issue of NGCDF, we have seen some busybodies and civil society organizations run to court on the pretext that NGCDF is not constitutional. NGCDF is constitutional, and to make this matter rest and to remove any doubt and settle the worries of these busybodies and civil societies which keep on running to court over this matter, I think we need to entrench NGCDF in the Constitution so that this matter is also rested once and for all. And I think we had already, the Joint Parliamentary Ad hoc Committee has already made quite some work on this. And it is my hope that the memorandum from the President, which is inclusive of the 4 issues, will not reinvent the wheel when it comes to the matter of NGCDF and NGAF and the Senate Oversight Fund, because the Joint Parliamentary Ad hoc Committee has already made some good progress on this matter. Therefore, we need to build on the work that has already been done by this committee so that we don't delay this process any further. And I think we all know the importance of NGCDF. It has built a lot of schools. In the last 5 years only, according to reports we have from the NGCDF board, just in the sector of bursary alone, 6 million students and 57 billion shillings have been used to support the education sector in this country. And we cannot belittle the importance of NGCDF and this matter of people running to court all the time, challenging the disbursements and challenging the implementation of this process and causing confusion is a matter that needs to be rested once and for all. And that is why it is important that we look at these matters now. And it is an historic opportunity for this Parliament, the 13th Parliament, to be able to settle all of these issues now. And it is good to note that His Excellency the President, William Samoei Ruto, has shown the goodwill that he's going to support these processes through and through. the only thing we need to do, because we don't know whether it will come a time when we'll have a president and the executive, which is as committed as the president we have now, in support of these 4 important issues that we have today. When it comes to the 2/3 gender principle, I think a lot of people have expressed themselves on this. A lot of honorable members have expressed themselves on this. And this matter should not be looked in the lenses, from the lenses of male or female gender. This is an inclusive gender matter. And as it was mentioned by some of the honorable members in the morning, this is a matter which appears today like it is perhaps a gap that needs to be filled by the female gender. But who knows, a few years down the road, we may have a female gender in the majority in this house, and it is the male gender who will require to get the nominations for this. Therefore, I would wish that we look at this matter from that lens, so that we give it the 100% support that it requires, knowing that the shoe, like it was put by another member, the shoe might be on the other foot tomorrow. Having said that, I think I will stop there. The Honorable Speaker, thank you for the opportunity.
Thank you very much. The member for Mombasa, the Honorable Zamzam Chimba.
Asante sana, Mheshimiwa Spika. Nipongeze mjadala wa leo, hasa ikifika thuluthi tatu ya kina mama. Na niweze kumpongeza sana mbunge wa Mandera kupigia pondo sana. Manake leo ni kina mama, kesho mtalia nyinyi wanaume. Kwa hiyo lazima tuwafikiane tuweze kupitisha mswada huu. Ningependa pia kuchangia mjadala wa leo na kuweza kusema kuwa ngafu, naanza na ngafu kwa sababu mimi mwakilishi wa kina mama, tuweze kuiweka na NGCDF na mgao wa ziada wa uangalizi ambao mwaita oversight. Na huu mgao wa oversight, pengine mimi ningependa kusema, sijui tukisema senator oversight wakati sote nafikiri tungeita parliament oversight fund, mgao wa bunge wa uangalizi, ingekuwa ni bora zaidi. Lakini yote 9-10, napenda kupongeza na kusema itakuwa ni vema sana tukiweka ndani ya katiba yetu ili kuweza kusaidia jamii kule mashinani. Inaaminika kuwa mpaka sasa watoto wetu wako nyumbani kwa sababu tu kuna mtu aliamka siku moja asubuhi akaona hawa watoto wanaopewa hizi pesa za basari hawafai mpaka iwekwe kwenye katiba. Lakini yote 9-10 maadamu ni sheria, mimi napendelea kusema kuwa tuweze kuweka mgao huu ndani ya sheria ili uweze kufikia wananchi kule chini. Jambo lingine ambalo limezungumziwa leo katika mjadala wa leo, na inasikitisha sana, siku zote wenzetu wakisimama utasikia Kamkunji, utasikia sijui Mavoko, utasikia wapi, lakini huwezi sikia kanisani. Mimi napenda kusema tuweke heshima, tusikumbushane kule tulikotoka, tusikumbushane nani alimuibia mwenzake, nani alipita, nani hakupita, kwa sababu kama tunataka kujenga taifa, basi tuwe na muafaka wa kuwa tutaweza kutoa heshima kwa viongozi wote. Na siwezi kukaa katika bunga hili nikiona kiongozi wangu wa chama akiweza kudhalilishwa, hata kama wataji majina huwa naelewa wanaenda wapi. Kwa hiyo tuheshimiane, tumheshimu yule pia alikuwa ni kiongozi ambaye alipigania taifa hili na aliweza kutuletea hii katiba ambayo tunafurahia leo kama kina mama 47 ndani ya bunge. Hii katiba yake ambayo alileta 2010 Bwana Raila aliweza kuipigania. Leo hii tunazungumzia thuluthi 2 ya wanawake ndani ya bunge kwa sababu yake. Ningependa pewe heshima na tuheshimu viongozi wetu wote. Na ningependa kusema, najua wengine pengine wako kule kwenye chai wanaangalia kwenye televisheni, wameweza kumgusagusa hapa, lakini kama mama Mombasa siwezi kubali. Tumheshimu Baba Raila Amolo Odinga kama tunavyostahili kuheshimu viongozi wengine. Na ningependa pia kusema katika serikali iliyoko Inasikitisha sana. Leo mjadala ambao umeletwa hapa, mjadala wa kwanza, ulikuwa juu ya vyeo.
I have a point of order by the Honorable Dende Nyoro, member for Kiharu.
Sorry, Madam Speaker, I think I pressed to contribute. I'm sorry for that.
Asante sana ndugu yangu Ndende kwa kuweka wazi. Nikiendelea, ningependa kusema mijadala imeletwa mingi leo katika bunge hili. Ingine imekuwa ni ya kupewa vyeo vya PSC kwa ndugu yetu kipenzi Bwana Mdhama, tunampenda sana na tunamtakia kila la kheri, lakini awe na jicho la tatu kuangalia pande zote kama alivyosema kiongozi wetu wa wachache katika bunge. Angalie kuwa hata nafasi za kazi zinatolewa pande zote mbili bila kuangalia kabila wala chama wala rangi. Hilo nampongeza sana, lakini masikitiko yangu makubwa ni kuwa Wakenya wanakufa na njaa. Nakumbuka ndugu zetu wa North Eastern, ndugu zetu wa Tana River, ndugu zetu wengi, ukiangalia kila sehemu watu wanakufa njaa. Wakenya wanahangaika. Tukiangalia wanyama wanakufa. Mimi ningependa kama wabunge tuweze kupanua akili zetu. Tuweze kupanua akili zetu kwa upana zaidi na kuhakikisha kuwa wale walotupigia kura kuja hapa katika bunge tunawapa kipaumbele. Chakula na njaa imekuwa baa la kustajabisha sana katika taifa hili. Lakini tumelifungia macho. Leo hii twazungumza mambo ya vyeo, twazungumza mambo mengine, lakini tumesahau Wakenya takriban mamilioni leo hii hawajui wataweka nini mdomoni. Leo hii wanatafuta hata maji. Na ndio maana mimi nakubaliana na huu mjadala unaosema kuwa mawaziri tuwalete hapa bungeni waweze kuwajibika. Manake leo tunataka tuwaulize, umepewa waziri wa kilimo, umepewa waziri wa maji, umepanga mikakati gani kama waziri, ama akili yako na kichwa chako umekipanua vipi janga hili la njaa uweze kulipigania, kuhakikisha kuwa leo kule Turkana wanapata chakula, kule North Eastern wanapata chakula, pale Mwakirunge Mombasa tunapata chakula. Kwa sababu hatuwezi kukaa siku zote miaka nenda miaka rudi, njaa imekuwa ni kitu cha kurejelewa. Ukiangalia kule Dubai ilikuwa ni janga, ilikuwa ni mahali ambapo ni desert, lakini leo ni kijani kibichi kila sehemu. Leo Dubai ambayo ilikuwa jua la choma paka katikati ya utosi, leo wanatoa matunda mazuri, wanatoa mboga nzuri tena safi, kwa sababu wamepata viongozi wenye kuvuta msukumo wa akili zao, wenye kuwafikiria wananchi. Kwa miaka 3 Dubai iliyokuwa ni janga, leo imekuwa ni mahali ambapo inatoa uzalishaji wa chakula hata zaidi. Na ningependa pia kwa haya kuelezea pia waziri wa kilimo. Nimeona pia wakulima wakilalamika kuwa mbolea ambayo ilitolewa bure leo inauzwa 3,500. Sisi tunataka chakula, tunataka Wakenya wapate chakula, lakini maji tumeongeza ushuru, mbolea zinauzwa, mashamba yamekuwa adimu. Tutawezaje kubadilisha maisha ya Wakenya ikiwa sisi tunaweka Wakenya katika hali ngumu zaidi na wakulima? Katika bunge hili la 13 ningeomba tuweze kuweka historia, wabunge wenzangu. Ningependa tuweze kuweka historia ya kuweza kubadilisha maisha ya Kenya. Ningependa tuweke historia ya kuweza kufuata katiba na kuangalia kina mama wamejaa katika bunge hili. Siwezi kutaja kwa majina, lakini leo imesikitisha sana mbunge wa bunge hili ameweza kusema mahali katika mkutano kuwa kina mama watakia nini kujaza ndani ya bunge, watakuja kuwa maflower girl, sijui watakuja kuwa maslay queen. Mimi ningependa kumwambia mahali aliko slay queen, pengine akileta mke wake hapa tuweza mpa hilo jina, lakini kwa sisi atuheshimu kina mama bunge hili. Hatuja kuja hapa kwa matani. Hatuja kuja hapa kutafutana na watu. Tumekuja kutafutia Wakenya haki zao, tumekuja kuangalia vile tunaweza kuboresha maisha ya wananchi na hadhi ya mama katika taifa hili, hadhi ya mama aweze kuheshimika. Sio popote utakapomwona mwanamke basi wewe unafikiria mambo ya ngono, hapana. Tunataka heshima kwa kina mama. Nikijaribu kumalizia, Mheshimiwa, ningependa pia katika yale ambayo yamezungumzwa leo ambayo ni ya kuwekwa ndani ya katiba, jambo la IEBC pia liangaliwe. Hatuwezi kusema sisi kila siku tutunga sheria, leo tumpatia kiongozi wa upinzani ofisi yake rasmi katika taifa hili, wakati ambapo pengine kitengo cha IEBC kinaweza kupeleka taifa hili katika vita vya kila siku. Na ndio maana wenzetu leo mutakuwa mwatudhalilisha, mwatuita majina yote, the Kamkunjis, the Mavokos, lakini it ends with IEBC. Sisi tunataka usawa. Leo nikiumwa mimi, ukinicheka jua kesho utaumwa wewe. Kwa hiyo ikiwa wanaweza kuweka sawa IEBC iweze kuhudumikia Wakenya kwa usawa, tuweze kupata haki ya kila mmoja. Leo Mama Zamzam nikianguka, nijue nimeanguka kwa haki. Leo dadangu Nyakaira akianguka, ajue ameanguka kwa haki. Lakini mambo ya kufanya filfinyange kisha Kenya ingie kwenye mtihani, hatuwezi kubali. Naona muda unasi, lakini leo kama Mama Mombasa naweza kuunga mjadala huu wa leo wa kuweza kuweka ofisi rasmi ya upinzani na kuweza kuweka two-thirds gender katika katiba hili. Naaminika kuwa naweza na tunaweza tukatimiza kwa pamoja. Asanteni sana na Mungu atubariki sote.
Very well. Member for Mombasa. The Honorable Kaluma.
Thank you very much, Madam Speaker. Madam Speaker, we don't have a substantive bill before us. So, His Excellency the President is inviting us to share our thoughts and insights on these matters His Excellency remitted to the Speaker of this Honorable House. And so I'll keep to that, devoid of politics, Madam Speaker. Madam Speaker, on this first issue on implementation of two-thirds gender principle, let me clarify that the determination and the advice by the former Chief Justice to the President related and concerned the 12th Parliament. It is not an issue. Were anybody to seek to dissolve this Parliament, that person has to take a case to the High Court and have it rise to the Supreme Court, or go to the Supreme Court on advisory opinion. And I'm saying that based on law and based on the fact that that advisory was made before this Parliament came into being, and it was not known how this Parliament would be composed. Number two, Madam Speaker, the measures the President proposes, and I know the President as a technical legal team advising on these proposals. Those measures, Madam Speaker, will still not help us to realize the two-third gender principle. Madam Speaker, the two-third gender principle begins its anchorage on Article 27 of the Constitution, dealing with the doctrine of equality and non-discrimination. Madam Speaker, the problem with two-third gender principle, and I'm not saying I'm opposed to it, I'm the son of a woman, the grandson of a woman, the father of a woman, and the husband of a woman, and the brother of women, several of them. So I support it. And I want our female gender, just as the male gender, to be in the leadership space, because their contributions are both valuable. The problem with the realization of the two-third gender principle is about the electoral system instituted by our Constitution, particularly at Article 38. Madam Speaker, everybody is entitled, under that article dealing with political rights, to stand for elections, to register to vote, and to vote whoever they want. And so that provision institutes what we call, Honorable Speaker, the first past, the post principle of elections, where people seek seats, and the citizens the citizens within the various constituencies elect whoever they want. You cannot realize any specific gender quota, be it 1/3, be it 2/3, be it 1/2 principle in such a system. And Madam Speaker, I wanted to explain to members that go to the system in South Africa, where they've realized it. Go to the system in Rwanda, where they have realized it. It is not the first past the post, but it is the party list or proportionate representation system. If you go to South Africa or Rwanda, it is the party voted. And the elections laws there require the party, before the parties are voted in an election, to present a zebra list which enables the parties to meet the gender. And based on the numbers the party gets, Madam Speaker, the line is drawn and then the members are picked. The question you want to ask is whether Kenyans agree to parties, ultimately in the end electing the representatives for them. So long as Kenyans, Madam Speaker, insist that they have to vote, Madam Speaker, for their MPs, for their president, for their leaders, and that the person who wins the elections wins, I think it is very unfair for anybody, without amending the Constitution to institute the party list system, to wait for Honorable Gikaria to be elected by the people of Nakuru, to wait for Kaluma, to wait for Honorable Rene to be specially elected, then start questioning Parliament why they are not properly composed. That is not the business of Parliament. And so I want to request the President that I agree with him that we need to establish these gender principles. But the amendment we need is not this amendment that we are putting in here, but an amendment, Madam Speaker, which removes the first past the post system under the Constitution and institutes the party list. I doubt Kenyans would agree, because in any event, even if the bill were to first come here, Honorable Deputy Majority Leader will confirm, it still has to go to referendum. In fact, most of these things have still to go to referendum. And I doubt, knowing how our parties operate, Kenyans would accept a situation like party list. So we are stuck with it. The fact is that with the constitutional design, it is incapable of being realized. Madam Speaker, I agree with the President on the proposal to have the CDF entrenched in the Constitution, with the proposal to have the National Government Affirmative Action Fund entrenched in the Constitution. Save to add, Madam Speaker, that we are not seeking this entrenchment because the current CDF Act or the law underpinning the National Government Affirmative Action Fund is in any way unconstitutional. I think what we need to do is to have the teams in court explain it to court that the time has come for the court to tell those Kenyans who believe only CDF ONGAF should be litigated to find other business to do. And I think that is the direction we are going. We are seeking to entrench it so that it is firmly secured and so that those benefits can continue to exist beyond the wishes of Parliament and the executive per time. But Madam Speaker, I have a problem with this proposal relating to Senate Oversight Fund. Whether we call it Senate Oversight Fund, whether we call it Parliamentary Oversight Fund, Madam Speaker, it will run afoul of the Constitution. And I know Honorable Joanna Ngeno will agree with me. And this is not to say, Madam Speaker, that I'm opposed to senators being facilitated better. Madam Speaker, the remuneration of any public or state officers is to enable them discharge their functions. Whether we call ourselves members of Parliament, whether we call others members of National Assembly, if you look at Article 260 of the Constitution, our title is members of Parliament. The roles of a member of Parliament run from Article 93 to Article 96. And what are they in summary at Article 94, Honorable Speaker? The roles of a member of Parliament, whether in the Senate or in the National Assembly, are legislation, are representation, and of course oversight, whether of state officers or of budget, and a bit of appropriation. Madam Speaker, our salary, the salary of the Senate, if it is small, if it is big, it is to enable them discharge those roles. You want to ask yourself the question, if we were to create the Parliamentary Oversight Fund, what will stop us from creating Parliamentary Legislation Fund, Parliamentary Representation Fund? Then Honorable Ndindi Nyoro will be asking you, then what will you be getting your salary for? Because you've created separate funds to do these things. Anybody taking that bill, if it were to be proposed to the Constitutional Court, or to the Supreme Court, we'll get the entire bill collapsed before it is debated. The way to go, and I'm saying this because Parliament, the President proposed that we find a way to facilitate the Houses of Parliament better. If it is salary which is low, let us get the Salaries and Remuneration Commission to create a leeway, whether it is for the Senate or members of Parliament in the National Assembly. If it is about facilitation, Parliament as an entity, Honorable Speaker, already has the power to budget. Let us have a budget line under the PSC whose duty it is to facilitate and to cater for the welfare of the members, so that that budget, whether we said the senators will be getting more in terms of the people they employ or the facilitation, we budget for it straight away and it goes outside there. Otherwise, this thing we are calling Senate Oversight Fund will not work. Honorable Speaker, the leader of official opposition cannot exist in a presidential system. And the leader of official opposition cannot exist absent the Prime Minister on the other side. Either way, this is going to change the structure and the functioning of Parliament. You want to ask yourself, Honorable Speaker, if you have the leader of official opposition, what would the minority leader be doing there? What would be the majority leader if the Prime Minister should be there? The way to go is that we have to make a decision whether we have a parliamentary system or we want a presidential system. We are happy that ministers should be coming here, Honorable Speaker, and this is important for me. But we should be careful, because members of Parliament, if you are not careful, we will kill all the committees, and that the committees will have no work.
Very well spoken, Honorable Kaluma. Member for Turkana Central, Joseph Emathi. The Honorable Naomi Wako, member for Marsabit.
Thank you, Madam Speaker, for allowing me to add my voice to this very important debate that is going on. And from the onset, I want to say that I support the motion on the memorandum that the President has written to us, seeking our attention and also support. Madam Speaker, I support this motion because it touches on the areas that are very important to us as members of Parliament and as leaders of this country. I want to start with the affirmative action funds, NG, CDF, NGAF, and Senate oversight. I was in Senate, the 12th Parliament, as nominated senator, and the 5 years ended while we were pushing for this. The challenges the senators go through, they are supposed to oversight billions and billions of money when they have not even been facilitated. And unless they are facilitated, the corruption we are talking about, the mismanagement of funds, and all the things that we hear happening in the counties will not be controlled unless the senators will be empowered so that they can do their oversight their oversight role. So for that, I support that. I am of the view that the senators be given the oversight fund so that they can be facilitated, and that can help them to be more effective. Within GAF, it is now about 6-7 months since we were elected, but unfortunately up to today, we have not received the GAF funds. That is mainly why I support this, because if all this is covered in our constitution, then we have no challenges like this. We will not face these challenges. We'll be able to be more effective, and we will have something that will, support us, and women will come without any worries, serve and do their work even at the grassroots without any problem. And so even with the NGCDF funds, we know that many students have been supported through these funds, many vulnerable children. When you look at the NGAF funds and the CDF fund, Madam Speaker, what I want to say here is that CDF covers a constituency, while NGAF covers the entire county. And what we have seen happening in our country, or the practice as at now, is the same amount of money that an area MP gets is the same amount of money that we are given as women representative. And that then confuses us, because you cannot compare a single constituency with 4 or 5 or 6 different constituencies in a county. When we amend this or bring this into our constitution, our interest will be taken care of, and even GAF fund will be well covered, and that then means that women will also get the funds that are relevant to their service, and that will help them to do their work effectively. Madam Speaker, on the issue of cabinet secretaries appearing before the members of parliament, I also support this, because right now there may be a gap between us and the cabinet secretaries, simply because some of them are not even known well by the members of the parliament. During the vetting, the CSS appear before their committees, but they are not known to everybody. So by them appearing, we will be able to create that good working relationship. We'll be able to talk to one another. We'll be able to have dialogue. We'll be able to bring issues that affect our country and also challenge them on the floor of the House. And Madam Speaker, that will then enhance the relationship of both the executive, the parliament and cabinet secretaries. It will also help us to be more effective, and even the CSS will be more effective. Representation of the people will be done well, and the people that we are serving, from the conversation that goes on and the debate and the questions that will be raised, they will see that their areas are well represented and the questions asked and answered very well. Unlike now, when maybe some of the CSS are not even known by the members of parliament. Again, on the position of the opposition leader, what I want to say is, for many years, we've had, of course, since independence, we've had this great nation that we all love and enjoy serving. But from the time that the opposition, you know, when we started practicing multi-party issue, the leaders of opposition have always suffered, because they use their money, they do their campaigns, and immediately after the campaigns and the elections are done, they are forgotten. But by having this position, we'll be able to have a special place for them, and they'll be able to have their own, whoever is there will have his own office and will be able to be busy. Madam Speaker, currently we are experiencing a challenge, because our opposition leader, the opposition leader, Honorable Raila, is busy on the streets campaigning, not campaigning, but having rallies and having meetings with people. If this office is created, then he'll have a better place to meet his people, to organize these things, and he will be serving the nation in a better way. So having the place for opposition leader in parliament is something that is good, and we need to accept and move on with it. Madam Speaker, we know very well that where there is no vision, people perish. If we continue the way we are, we may not get anywhere. But allowing and embracing and giving them the opportunity to serve the country better by challenging our government and maybe even the government to come in future, that will be a good thing to practice. Now I want to mention something on the issue of two-third gender. Madam Speaker, this is something that we as women leaders have been fighting for and have been praying for. Today it is us, yes, but tomorrow, 10 years down the line, you do not know. Maybe we'll be sympathizing with the male gender. When we first started the debate of two-third gender. We thought that many people are supporting us. In fact, in 12th Parliament, Honorable Duale was very, very passionate, and together with many other members of Parliament, they were very passionate. They tried to support us. We had many breakfasts, but at the end of the day, we didn't succeed. And if our president is the one now to initiate the entire process, I think as women leaders, we should just run with the whole idea and see how best we can capture and, grab the opportunity and succeed in this, because it is long overdue. Our women have done a lot for this country to be where we are. When you look at the performance of women in every office or in everywhere where they serve, you cannot compare. They give their best and they serve the nation with a lot of passion. But when it comes to this, it has been very difficult, because when it comes to election, women face a lot of challenges because our campaigns are money-based and financed very well. And women have no much money, and so they face a lot of challenges and intimidated in many ways. But when we put this in place, then it will help women to get into power without much problem. And Madam Speaker, I just want to conclude by saying, I challenge the women in this House and even everywhere so that we can support this motion so that it succeeds, and then we will be proud that our government has taken care of us, and we will catch up with the rest of East Africa and African countries that have gone before us and embraced the leadership of women in a better way. I support this motion, and I thank you.
Very well. The member for Dagoretti North, Honorable Beatrice Elachi.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. I also rise to speak on the message by the President on these opportunities that we have been given to discuss. Madam Speaker, on the onset, being a woman who started as a woman leader in this country in training women, not just outside, but also women in Parliament, I think one of the things that we have really talked about in this country until we've arrived to a level of passing the new constitution in 2010, when we thought, Madam Speaker, we will achieve now the issue of the two-thirds gender rule and move on as a country, as we even in the 11th Parliament had an opportunity to see all the bills that were to open space in terms of the new constitution being passed by this House. And at that time, we were unable completely, Madam Speaker, to even just touch on Article 100, Article 81, Article 27, all of them speaking about the affirmative action and the two-thirds gender rule. As we appreciate and thank the President for bringing in the messages, we again find ourselves, and I just want to speak very candid, Madam Speaker, as women, because again, the matter has been put into too many issues. And with these issues, you will find ourselves again losing this proposal if we are not careful and if we do not look at it as a House to agree that some of these issues can move on. Since we have the ad hoc committee that had started the process of CDF and all that, can be a good avenue to deal with the issues of CDF. And we remain with a few issues, which is the two-thirds gender rule on this proposal for it to work. But having said that, Madam Speaker, I think when I look at one, the issue of the two-thirds that has been brought in, and I think with good intentions, but I think also those who advised the President could have read and realized you have now picked on Article 27 of the Constitution, which is within the Bill of Rights. And that is why everyone is now talking about this referendum, because it's in the Bill of Rights. And anything that touches on the Bill of Rights, Kenyans themselves said you cannot implement without taking it to a referendum. And therefore, we might find ourselves thanking, but then again being short that we cannot do it until we get to a referendum. So, Madam Speaker, when you look at 27.8, it is very clear, and I know when you read word by word, it speaks on, in addition to the measures contemplated in Clause 6, the state shall take legislative and other measures to implement the principle that not more than 2/3 of the members of elective or appointive bodies shall be of the same gender. Now, the moment you bring that again, then you ask yourself, when we are going to nominate the women, how is it going to work? Yet we are supposed to push it through political parties so that it becomes elective. So we would want to really, when we are canvassing now the real bill, it has to come out very clear so that as women, we don't start a journey again and find ourselves with the way we pushed with Duale 1, Duale 2, Duale 6, and we ended up with the same results. Madam Speaker, when you look at the issue, and this issue of the opposition office, I think, Madam Speaker, we must agree. Sometimes this House, we have to have our own mind and agree we are legislators. And where we feel things have not gone right, we don't need to just say they are right. We are a presidential system. It is Kenyans who agreed on a presidential system. Let them feel. The day they will go to another referendum, they will take us to a parliamentary system. But for now, let us tell Kenyans, whether you like your opposition leader or what, you cannot entrench it here because we are in a presidential system. We borrowed the American system. We have to live with it. There's no opposition leader in America. There's none. Trump is not there. There's majority and minority. And we must accept that. It is how the minority side works to ensure you put checks to our government, Madam Speaker, which I think that's the best way. And it will work even better. So if we try and bring this, then now everyone will be saying, we need a prime minister. And we will have to now formulate again something to make sure there's a prime minister. So if we want all that, why can't we sit down in a bipartisan way and agree that for the sake of Kenya to move, we need a hybrid that works for the country so that the country can tone down. Madam Speaker, then we come to the issue of now the Senate. I think even within the other processes that we have, the lawyers advised us so well, let us not call it even Senate oversight and I don't know national. Let us just call it parliamentary oversight if we want to get it right and not to have ourselves in a lot of questions and then not bringing again back the sibling rivalry that we've always had with Senate. We want to finalize this, let us make it clean. And so because this is not a motion or these are not proposals, this is a message the President wants us to ventilate on it, bring in good ideas and build. And I'm hoping all that we are saying, Madam Speaker, is being picked so that when now the real time will come for all this, we are able to work around. I know the Supreme Court has spoken. They have said we can be, yes, but let us do it then in the right way. They have also given us that time to do it in the right way. They have not come to us and say, just do it for the sake of doing. So, Madam Speaker, as we speak on this matter, and we have to ask also our chairs of JLAC and the ad hoc committee, I hope we are also not in a process to derail so that these things find themselves at each other. I am hoping the process we had started on the joint committee that Parliament had approved on our funds should proceed. And we should stop delaying it and now derailing it in this. It will be very unfair for this House that we were given an opportunity to go and come up on how we can pass the funds that are supposed to support this Parliament and GAF and Senate. And now we have dragged ourselves back on the drawing board. We are about to start another process. Then we will reach a point and say, oh, these processes are the same, we need to merge them. It will be so unfortunate for this House. Can we stand firm with what we started on the issue of our funds? We deal with our funds as we await on this, and this is a process we also need to ask ourselves whether we want to see all these processes together, all these issues being put into one bill. If it goes in one bill, we are going to shoot ourselves. We shall be forced in the end to take all these issues to a referendum, and that will be very sad for this House. So let us also be an arm of legislators that believe in themselves, that you can legislate and things can move. Madam Speaker, you find that today we have left the courts to legislate. The other day, there was just a very interesting ruling where the courts just decided in finality that I think there were clinical doctors or what of Nairobi, they don't need to be paying. They were exempted out of the license that they are normally given by the county. So you wonder, how then are you going to move, and how then? So, Madam Speaker, as we speak on this, I am hoping for the last, women will achieve the 2/3 gender rule, but in the right way, and I hope this House will do that. Thank you, Madam Speaker.
Thank you. The member for Baringo North, the Honorable Joseph Makelap.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. I want to start from the onset that the President had very good ideas by submitting this memoranda. But his advisors were not able to separate the beans and the maize. And I want to start with the position of leader of opposition. Madam Speaker, truthfully speaking, this is intended, the purpose of this is intended to cure the business of winner takes it all in an election, especially in a very close election that almost goes 50-50, and that person that commands almost a half of the country is left without participating in the democratic process of our country. Madam Speaker, I agree that this matter could become very difficult. It will be difficult in a manner that the current constitution and the current constitution of this country has envisaged that Kenya shall be a presidential system of government. That is why I want to provide logical ideas that you will realize, and members of parliament in this House will realize that this matter will not be achieved very soon unless some few things are addressed. Madam Speaker, under this system, you can have a president who has won the elections of a country, but it doesn't have the numbers in parliament. It will be a situation where you are a president, but minority in parliament. In that case, if you now say the person who became number 2 becomes the leader of opposition, and the other one who won the election becomes a president, honestly, let's get things right. Even in this last election, and I belong to Kenya Kwanza, but I must be truthful to this nation. If the current president did not work hard to ensure that we have the numbers in this House, whatever working hard means, we had the minority, and yet we won the elections. So could you mean that we have a leader of opposition in the House, and we have a president who has won elections? So this is the complex of our presidential system. So we either choose as a country to go presidential system or we go parliamentary system. For example, Madam Speaker, take for instance, you have a leader of minority. If you want to cure this particular matter, then allow those persons running for president
to also contest as members of parliament, so that when they reach here, they can obviously occupy the position of minority leader and majority leader. And many members of parliament in this house do not understand that this Constitution 2010 does not anticipate that a member of parliament is either opposition or government. We are supposed to provide what is called an oversight, a check on government. Madam Speaker, that is why when we were inducted in this house, we were told it is free sitting. What does that free sitting mean? It means each one of us has an opportunity to check and oversight government. So, Madam Speaker, on that matter of leader opposition, there is much to be done. If you want a leader opposition to be in this house, let's change the law so that people running for president and deputy president can actually run as members of parliament or senators, so that they come to the house as leader of minority or leader of majority in the house. But just imagining that leader opposition comes to this house and there is also a minority leader and a majority leader, I mean, it is clashing. It is a clash of the law. It does not require neurosurgeon. It is facts. Let us argue on facts of law, so that we try to address the issue of winner takes it all. The president of this country means it well, but the advisors, the people called lawyers who are supposed to advise and bring order, are not advising it properly. I want to say with a lot of sincerity. Let's now address the matter of oversight funds. We had already created a process, and our process to ensure that CDF and GAF are actually in the Constitution was in the correct track. And we don't want to come back again using this so that this memoranda to achieve what we want. No, let the process of anchoring CDF, NGCDF, GAF proceed as it was to the end. We shall be able to achieve the results immediately. On the matter of Senate oversight funds, Madam Speaker, I think we should be knowledgeable enough. You see, it is not about Senate. It is the people who are trying to sell something to Senate is just actually making a false hope, because it is believed that CDF belongs to members of parliament. CDF does not belong to us. It belongs to the people of Kenya. We are supposed to be the ones oversighting CDF. When we struggle in this house to ensure that CDF are anchored in law, it is not because it is our funds. We are actually oversighting to ensure that there are resources for the people of Kenya to implement programs that are not captured in the fourth schedule, functions that belong to national government that are not being catered at the county government, to be catered by CDF at the constituency level. Madam Speaker, if you create what is called Senate Oversight Fund, then Parliament will also say we also need a National Assembly Oversight Fund. If you want to create an oversight fund, let us call it Parliamentary Oversight Fund, so that everyone who is either in the Senate or in the National Assembly will be able to benefit. And I want to tell you, Madam, why it is clashing. We say senators actually, to what extent should senators oversight the county governments? We have MCAs who are legislators, who are supposed to do a day-to-day oversight of county governments. So at what level do the oversight of senators go? You know, let us face facts as they are. MCAs are supposed to do oversight to the governors and the county executives and the people doing expenditure at the executive at the county level. We at the national level, we oversight the national executive. The senators, to what extent do senators oversight the county governments of this country? These are facts that whether you are in Kenya Kwanza or Azimio, it is facts as they are. Madam Speaker, for the purposes of GAF, I support 100%, because the women who are in this parliament could also want to address matters that are peculiar. And it will also reach a time that there will be more women in this parliament than men. And we want representation. And they want to actually perform their functions well. Then GAF is not is not an oversight fund for women. It is a fund that women in parliament are oversighting, trying to address inadequacies on the ground that affects children, affects women, affects people of all nature. Madam Speaker, those are facts. On the issue of two-third gender rule, Madam Speaker, I want us to be alive to Article 38. Every Kenyan has a right, Bill of Rights. Do we then want to go for referendum? Because anything on Bill of Rights, you will have to go to a referendum. It will not go to a parliamentary initiative. What does that mean? We don't want to do the bing-bong business of the other day, saying we don't want what was popularly called the thing that was rejected. This the change of the constitution. So, Madam Speaker, to address the gender rule in this House, it must be addressed outside the confines of the Constitution through articles of Parliament within the confines of IBC and political parties of Kenya. Madam Speaker, I think the people that this matter will be placed, we need to sit down as a nation to realign so that it will be a win-win for Kenya, not again messing up the Constitution that we came in 2010. Madam Speaker, the President has very good intentions, but we need to realign, adjust to fit the system. Thank you, Madam Speaker.
Very well. The Honorable Mayaka Irene, nominated member.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. Madam Speaker, I just want to give my remarks and comments to what, in my view, is an opinion from the President and proposal, because I do not want to imagine that this is at the beginning of a process of initiating a constitutional changes coming from him. Madam Speaker, first of all, let me just say, because we've had in this House very many members castigating what Azimio has been doing in terms of the people barazas, because there is no rule in this country that says that you cannot have courts of public opinion when you're speaking to the people of Kenya. Whether or not the office of the official opposition is there or not, now nobody prevents anyone from speaking to the people of Kenya. Madam Speaker, if I can just begin to give my comments to the President's memo, because in my view, I think what the President did is that he took the BBI proposal and looked through it, and he really liked what he saw and decided that he also wants to make an opinion on it, which I do not fault him for that, because some of the things that he mentioned here that were in the BBI were fantastic suggestions that would put this country at a very good place. Madam Speaker, on the two-third gender rule, which is actually something that is already on Article 81B, but the reason why this has never been properly implemented is because the article does not give the meat and specifics of how this should be done in a proper way. Mr. Speaker, because now it's Mr. Speaker, in my view, what I think ought to be done is that we need to have a holistic review of this constitution. The other day we were in Mombasa, and one of the clerk assistants from Canada did give us an example of a compelling political process that they have in their country, where political parties are made to actually select and put aside constituencies specific for women, so that in that way you're able to make sure that the two-third gender is achieved. This is one of the ways that we should actually be looking at resolving this issue. Because, Mr. Speaker, we have had the affirmative action, women coming through the affirmative action, who have been fantastic examples, who have gone on to not only get elected, but others have even gone on to be elected as governor, like, for example, Her Excellency Cecile Mbarire, Millie Mabona, Martha, just to name but a few. And I like the fact that some of our male colleagues are recognizing the fact that soon it will be the male child who will actually be fighting for this two-third gender, because as things are going, Mr. Speaker, the female gender is really capturing these seats very fast. We have shown good examples out there, and people are electing women even more. Mr. Speaker, if I can just give my comments on the official opposition. Again, back to the BBI. The spirit behind BBI was that as a country, we should never have a situation where the winner takes all. And one of the things that it advocated for is that not only should we have the office of the official opposition budgeted for as well, but that we should also have a shadow cabinet. What the president is proposing right now, ideally, as per the courts that rule that these initiatives cannot come from the president, which I do not agree with, even though we respect the decision of the courts. I think this is a matter that should also be taken back and prosecuted through a public participation decision. It cannot come through the presidency. And as I said, these are his ideas, his proposals, which are rightful, but this is not the process that should ideally be followed. Mr. Speaker, when it comes to the issue of ministers coming here for questioning, again, I agree with those members who said that this will end up rendering our committees to be irrelevant, because part of the work of the committees that they do is for them to be able to question ministers, for ministers to appear before them. If we start bringing the ministers here, then the committees become irrelevant. Again, back to BBI. BBI's proposal was that 50% of the ministers that we do have ought to be members of parliament. Through this process, it would have been so much easier for you to be able, for us to be able to question ministers and for them to be able to be held accountable. This other process that the president is proposing, in my view, I think it's a backdoor and a shortcut towards bringing back BBI into parliament, which should not be the case. Mr. Speaker, on the oversight fund, again, I agree with my fellow colleagues that ideally this should be a parliamentary oversight fund. Our colleagues here brought a very good motion, which was committed to a committee that is reviewing it, and I think that's the process we should follow, because there are proposals on Article 24A to D, which covers the NGCDF, the NGAF fund, and the additional fund on a special fund, including the oversight fund, is something that we should actually give priority to make sure that it is fully enacted into law, so that then this becomes a parliamentary oversight fund that covers both the Senate and the National Assembly. Mr. Speaker, therefore, what I'd just like to say as I conclude is that as a house, we should not be encouraging having such very pertinent constitutional reforms coming through opinions and memos, because we will be setting a very dangerous precedence in this country. This ought to follow the right procedure. And therefore, even as the JLAC committee members then proceed to have a look at this matter, I want to encourage them. It doesn't matter whether you're from the Kenya Kwanza side or the Azimio side, do the right thing, set the right precedence, because as my good senior once said, Honorable now Governor Orengo, is that the government eats its own children, and this will one day eat you if you're not careful with it. I submit.
The Honorable Ndindi Njoro, Chair of the Budget and Appropriations Committee.
Thank you very much, Mr. Speaker, and for giving me this opportunity to give my views in regards to the communication by the President. And as you said before, this is a general debate. We are just giving our views. There's no voting yet. And I'll talk about just a few issues. Number one, I am very elated by the President's view, which corresponds with the view of this House, that CDF is so important an institution and a fund that it can no longer be left hanging to the whims of the people. And especially it cannot be left to be bullied from all sides by people who actually do not understand the importance of this fund insofar as the Kenyan people are concerned. NGCDF is not an MP's kitty. NGCDF is a community fund, and it has been a very helpful and far-reaching fund in this country. Mr. Speaker, many countries actually have come to benchmark and also implemented such a program like the one we run in this country. And if you go across every corner of this country, the many projects that we see that are complete, that the Kenyan people are already getting value from them, majority of them are NGCDF sponsored. In fact, Mr. Speaker, if you go around the country, you could hardly identify a stored project that is funded by NGCDF, because the processes are very thorough, and especially the monies that are put aside for development that fund is protected, and only 5% is actually left for other things other than development. That is the recurrent expenditure of the office that we call admin. Mr. Speaker, today I came to this house late because I was in Kiharu yesterday and today, and I'm still talking about NGCDF. We have been able to launch a program we are calling Kiharu Masomo Bora program, which is covering all our day schools in Kiharu. In total, 14,000 of them, 14,000 learners, and 60 institutions, sorry. It is covering 60 institutions and 14,000 learners in our day schools. And through NGCDF, we have been able to optimize the fees, the requirements of the school, and the money that is required, to the point where we have been able to scale down the fees payable by the parents per student to only 1,000 per term. Only 1,000 per term, Mr. Speaker. And the way we have done this is to optimize the supplies that schools get, so that if we pull CDF money and resources together, then we are able to aggregate all the supplies in terms of, for example, stationery and other educational needs, and also meals. Out of only that 1,000, because of the help of Kiharu NGCDF and other stakeholders, Mr. Speaker, all the learners will be able to take 10 o'clock tea or uji in school. They'll be able to get lunch, which is actually not just githeri every day, but only 3 days githeri and 3 days rice. And we're also providing lunch, including 10 o'clock meal, uji or tea, even on Saturdays, so that all the learners can remain in school actually 6 days a week. I'm talking about Kiharu because this is an NGCDF project, Mr. Speaker. And there are many such kind of projects across the country where, because of the thorough oversight by these members of this house, that these monies are able to reach to the corners where actually the people need government support and government resources. And therefore, putting NGCDF and anchoring the same in the Constitution is a very noble cause, because some of the projects that we undertake, like the one I've just talked about, like Kiharu Masomo Bora program, will need to be sustainable. And for sustainability of the NGCDF programs and projects, then we need to be sure that this kitty is here for posterity for many years to come, because the kind of plans we do are not just plans for today, but plans for tomorrow and the other day and next year and to the future. Secondly, Mr. Speaker, I want to say something about Senate Oversight Fund. Mr. Speaker, I have a privilege to be serving this House and the Kenyan people in the Budget Committee. We appropriate over 370 billion Kenya shillings that goes to our counties. And Mr. Speaker, some of these monies can unlock our local economies, our village economies, our taxonomies across all counties, if these funds are expended in a manner that will stimulate the economy. But unfortunately, the bulk of this money goes into paying salaries and goes into paying recurrents, the ones that survive after most of it, of course, takes off through the leadership. Mr. Speaker, we need men and women who will be able to be the eyes of Kenyans in regards to how counties expend this public money. And therefore, it will go a long way into giving our senators enough strength in terms of funds to move around, to question, to do all manner of audit. Not the audit in terms of the books, but audit in terms of the projects conducted or undertaken by counties, even in regards to the value for money, and in regards to the use in terms of how these programs help the Kenyan people. And therefore, it is good for us to extend this fund to the senators. They are doing a very good job. We need to support them so that they are able to look after the bulk of the money, close to 400 billion, that we said to our counties. In fact, if county monies were able to be expended the way we do CDF, Mr. Speaker, the national government would be left with very little to do, because this is so much money in our villages, supporting education, supporting healthcare, supporting all other functions that we conduct and also that would be conducted by the county governments. And therefore, Mr. Speaker, it is a good thing that we support our senators, give them the tools they need to conduct thorough oversight to our counties, Mr. Speaker, because it is important. Mr. Speaker, the issue of two-third gender rule and the other issue about the office of the leader of opposition, I want to talk broadly about the two in regards to democracy. Mr. Speaker, our democracy has come from far, and we are growing, we are becoming a champion in the region. And looking back, Mr. Speaker, even to the inception of democracy itself, the democracies that actually are anchored properly are democracies that grew after countries developed state machinery or bureaucracy, and therefore democracy came after the state actually existed. And countries that actually have democracy coming before the state, they never experience stability. But countries that experience first a strong bureaucracy, a strong state, then democracy comes to check, they usually thrive. And Mr. Speaker, you cannot check a state that does not exist. And therefore it is important, even as we talk about strengthening our democracy through the two issues that the President communicated, that we realize that for a democracy to thrive, a state needs to be strong, number one, but also number two, for us to move out of the politics of static, toxic identity, we need to create other fluid identities. Currently, our politics is domiciled on the basis of tribe and ethnicity, which is toxic, and there is no movement. But when we create industrialization, we create a good economy, Mr. Speaker, then we have other identities, like where we work. We create other identities, like the level of education, which is fluid, because anyone can move from this area to the other in terms of identities. And therefore, Mr. Speaker, I think we are in the right direction by first checking on our economy, so that even as we build on that in terms of governance, then our democracy will be premised on an economy that drives, and the people who are already engaged in being active agents of our economy. Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I submit.
Honorable Dindi Njoro, I want to call upon all MPs who are coming the first time to visit Kiaru and see by themselves what CDF is doing for Kiaru people under your oversight. And I think as a person who has seen it, I know it is good. The gentleman from Nyando, the Honorable Jared Okello.
I thank you very much, Honorable Speaker. Allow me from the outset to welcome back my colleagues and the Office of the Speaker and the Secretariat in general, having been at home during our recess for the last 2 months. On the same breath, Honorable Speaker, allow me to express our collective frustration and resentment as a House on this matter of NGCDF. Before we went home for our recess, Honorable Speaker, the CS Treasury did make an undertaking that from the 9th day of December 2022, 2 billion shillings were to be expended to our accounts every week, which by now, Honorable Speaker, our accounts should be having, every individual constituency account should be having 80 million shillings, Honorable Speaker. The Cabinet Secretary has walked back on all the promises he has made, And up to until the time we showed up in Mombasa during our induction and staged a small go-slow, we had not received anything, Honorable Speaker. This House is a co-equal branch of government with the executive and together with the judiciary. This House has gone into lengths to midwife and legislate pieces from the executive without any delay or any ordinary delay. But here we are, executive makes promises to us that are never respected, Honorable Speaker. Today, they will be coming out asking us to pass the supplementary budget, number 1, supplementary budget 1 of 2022-2023. I want to ask this House to refuse to pass this supplementary budget until the entire NGCDF monies are wired into our accounts. Why do I say this? Most of our children who solely depend on the bursaries are still holed up at homes without any recourse. And we are here passing every piece of legislation and every agenda from the executive. I want this House to stand strong and refuse this supplementary budget until all the monies are submitted. Back to the cause, Honorable Speaker. There are 4 issues that have been raised by William Samoei Ruto as regards the memorandum to the Speaker of the National Assembly. And that is on oversight, Office of the Official Opposition, NGCDF, and the gender representation, Honorable Speaker. Now, if you read Article 255 of our Constitution, apart from the NGCDF, all these must go through a referendum. All of them, Honorable Speaker. And NGCDF, as you did allude to, Honorable Speaker, during your contribution, there is nothing illegal about NGCDF. There is nothing unconstitutional about the NGCDF Act of 2015. But we still want to strive to anchor it in law so that it can be solidified in a way that no court in this republic would once again tinker with it or throw it out or disturb it, as we have seen in the recent past, Honorable Speaker. So I'm very much afraid that if we carry out an omnibus legislation and include NGCDF in the proposals as advanced by the President, then the NGCDF as an act may face, the wrath together with all these 3 that have been presented by the President. And therefore, I ask that let us decipher issues. If it is about NGCDF, let it be a stand-alone advancement of proposed legislation. Let us not lump it up with the rest that probably are likely to face a problem with the judiciary branch of our government, Honorable Speaker. And therefore, I would ask that even as JLAC retreats to look into this, let NGCDF be a stand-alone. Let it not be together with the rest, Honorable Speaker. Honorable Speaker, it shouldn't be lost on us that why BBI's fate died at the Supreme Court is because the former President, Uhuru Kenyatta, did gazette a team that was going around the country to collect views as far as changing certain constitutional issues happened then. And therefore, the mere fact that the President gazetted that team, the entire BBI died in the hands of the 7 judges. Now, President Uhuru only gazetted and did not do anything else. We have been invited by William Ruto by way of a letter to the Speaker of the National Assembly. And not only that he has written a letter, he has included a memorandum, and he has also suggested areas where these changes should be made. I'm very much afraid that if this goes before a court of law, and indeed it will, through the civic society or the civil society, this thing will be dead on arrival, just because President Ruto is putting his hands in the changes of our constitution, Honorable Speaker. And we also need to see the amendments for what they are. There has been a proposal to bring in cabinet secretaries in this House. What does that therefore mean? That the work of oversight committees are going to be dead. Because what will be the role of PSC? What will be the role of PIC? If those cabinet secretaries can personally present themselves before this House, Honorable Speaker. And this is an elaborate process of killing the role of the opposition. You do understand that when you talk about PIC, when you talk about PSC, and all the oversight committees, it is only the opposition that occupy and dominate these committees, Honorable Speaker. And by so killing these oversight committees, you inevitably kill the opposition. So on this other hand, we are being conned to get into this trap so that we can allow ministers to come here, killing the oversight roles, but at the same time we are told, by the way, we also need the role of official opposition leader in the House. I mean, I think we are smarter than that, Honorable Speaker, to be brought into this conundrum. Honorable Speaker, this is something that will go before the Republic, and Kenyans will have to voice their concerns on this matter. I do not know how prepared Kenyans are to increase 100 female gender into this House, 100 of them, and how that feeds into the national budget at a time when the country is suffering, and not less than a cabinet secretary in charge of Treasury has come out to say this country is broke. And you are also saying at the same time that let us bring in 100 more women into the National Assembly. Honorable Speaker, in order to cure this, because again, it is important that this House is balanced, why can't we compel political parties that during their nomination processes have equal number of women as those of men inside this House, so that at the end of the day, we do not lump up more additional budgets into the House, but only cure the number of women to be brought into this House by way of political parties, Honorable Speaker. And by that, we are going to adhere to the law, and we are going to sidestep this idea of pumping in additional 10 billion shillings into the budget of this National Assembly or of the Senate, Honorable Speaker. And with that, I thank you for the opportunity.
Thank you very much. The Honorable David Gikaria, the person under whose charge our environment is protected.
Thank you. Thank you, Honorable Speaker, and my good friend, Honorable Kaluma. First of all, Honorable Speaker, I rise to support this motion. And Honorable Speaker, when you're giving your remarks or you're giving your contributions, Honorable Speaker, I really followed keenly. And to some extent, you did convince